Hello and welcome to the podcast. My granny is Irish. This week we have Frank back on from the New Conservative, and we've got quite a lot to get through, particularly focusing on events in the UK, and also seeing how they are relevant to Ireland. So, I mean, a lot has happened, Frank, since we last spoke. But it as usual, well, it's only ever bad news, or at least I guess you have to focus on the bad news for these things. And I wanted to talk to you, Frank, about all of these sort of really terrible attacks in the UK with the use of knives. Now, this has sort of been an ongoing thing, certainly since I was there. Um, and whether they're getting more frequent or not, some people will say no, but they certainly seem to be getting more brutal. So I don't know if you want to start with taking us through a few of those stories.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's nice to see you again, Laura, and I'm glad you've not been stabbed. Same here.
No,
So that's
well,
a bit of good news. Yeah, so a particularly horrible one was the Uxbridge case, which was just under a week ago, about a week ago now, where a guy called Wayne Broadhurst, who was obviously a valued member of the community, was a road sweeper, I think, was out walking his dog, and he got in the way of an Afghan refugee who had been given leave to remain till 2027. And I think this guy had been having some kind of problem with his landlord, who he'd already attempted to kill. He'd then come out of the house and stabbed a 14-year-old boy, which seems to match lots of other stories for some reason. I don't know, 14 to a special age. And Wayne was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing one of those things that used to be mundane, like getting a train, going to a bank, going to a concert, going to a dance class. But now you're running risk of life and limb. And he was stabbed to death for the crime of walking his dog. What's interesting about this one, I think, Laura, is that this garnered almost no attention from the powers that be. I don't think, I could be wrong here, but certainly days after, Keir Starmer had not even mentioned this. And this is the guy who kneels for Black Lives Matter and any spurious cause. Hadn't even mentioned, hadn't given his thoughts and prayers. And I'm sure that would have been a sad loss for the family. So that's a concern, and as to why that might be. But as you say, these things are coming thick and fast, basically on a daily basis. So we can stick to this one, or we can jump to the next one. I don't know what your
yeah,
thoughts
no,
are.
well, I like you. I hadn't sort of seen this in the news. I saw it come up on Twitter at the weekend, or no, I think it was last week, when I was away with my two children. And again, people on the left would say, "Oh, well, you're only focusing on this crime because the alleged he's been charged now and he awaits trial. The alleged murderer is foreign. He's an Afghani refugee." And I'm always like, well, yeah, exactly, because I don't know how many times you need to say it. You're in Ireland and England. You're stuck with the natives stabbing people. We can't deport them. The question is, should you import even more? And I mean, this is from the BBC. I think there were a number of things that I think caught the attention. First of all, Wayne Broadhouse, who was only 59, as you say, he was walking his dog. First of all, I think he was actually a binman, so he's one of these. He's a very working class man. He does this very critical job of, keeping our houses clean. I actually wrote a blog a few months ago saying bin men are heroes, because I know they're on strike in Birmingham still. And I'm just like, just pay them what you need to pay them. And he was doing that quintessential thing of, in England and obviously in Ireland, but particularly in England, of walking his dog. And as you say, he didn't get it, because I unfortunately watched the footage online. I don't know if you did. He didn't. As you said, this Afghani refugee, Safi Dawood, I think, who's 22 and has been charged with murdering, comes out of this house. As you say, he's already had a dispute with his landlord. And it's a really, really vicious attack. I mean, perhaps all knife attacks are, but it is absolutely vicious. Poor Mr. Broadhurst mustn't have known what was hit him. He hit the ground and he got caught sort of under a car. So I think that's what stopped him from escaping. It was absolutely brutal. He wouldn't have stood a chance. And I said, because otherwise he's a 50-year-old man, right? And the Afghani refugee is 22. And I think what caused the outrage was, as he said, he broke into the UK as usual, on the back of a lorry. Okay, so they will police your language and they will police your tweets, but they still cannot police the borders. So he breaks into England on the back of a lorry. This was 5 years ago, and then isn't deported for some reason. Someone, I presume at the Home Office, granted him leave to remain in 2020 until 2027. But it seems that he can't handle a dispute with his landlord, and his way of resolving this dispute is to get a knife. And either he didn't seem to be able to kill the landlord or a 14-year-old, but he did kill this man who he knows nothing about. You see, a complete stranger. And he's now been charged and now he'll be detained. Okay, but that's no good to Wayne Broadhurst. And I just thought, I know it was picked up by Elon Musk and things, and I don't really like his rhetoric, but I just thought, like, this is just outrageous. You can't, like, and oh, by the way, who was the MP for Uxbridge? Do you remember? Boris Johnson.
Oh,
Boris Johnson. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so he inflicted himself, I think, on the poor people of Uxbridge in order to become an MP and then become Foreign Secretary and then become PM and then preside over Brexit. And of course, it was under Boris that the immigration numbers absolutely exploded.
Oh, so we got the 4 million Boris wave to come. So there's going to be more Wayne Broadhursts, I assume.
Yeah. So when you look at this as a British person, I mean, it must just drive you completely crackers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's as you mentioned, people saying to you, "Oh, well, you only care about it because it's an illegal immigrant." It's well, exactly right, because you can't do anything about. Or you can do certain things, but you can never be 100% sure you're going to stop the homegrown crime. And by the way, Brits are already reasonably good at crime. We don't need to import it. We've got people queuing for those jobs, but can draw a direct causal pathway between government complicity, government inaction, government refusal to the most basic level of defending the borders. This guy should not have been in the country. Wayne Broadhurst should still be walking his dog. That is a totally different state of affairs. And the entire issue of immigration, I think, it's something that is obviously going to decide the next election, and probably if UK is not dead and buried after that, I would literally vote for a government that came in. It could be Farage, it could be someone else. They could literally stand there and say, 100%, we're going to take care of immigration. We're going to seal the borders, which would take about a week. We're going to prioritize legal immigration based solely on the needs of the country. We're going to be like any sensible country. We're going to say criminal record, no. Drugs, no. Gang links, no. You're not bringing all your family. You're not claiming benefits. As we just had that couple of weeks ago, it's like 10 billion a year. It's costing us just on migrant benefits. Shouldn't be claiming anything. If any party came in and said, we will solve immigration, we guarantee we'll solve immigration, we have no policies on anything else. But we know that solving immigration will basically filter down and solve so many things. I would vote for that government 100%.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also, I think, especially when you're dealing with knife crime, it just shows how much culture matters, because after the terrible stabbings of the girls in Southport, I know the next aim, right, was we're going to stop teenagers acquiring knives on Amazon, and we're going to really shut down on the knife situation. You're like, but everybody knows you can't, like, there's nothing to stop if someone wants to take a knife out of their kitchen and go on a stabbing spree. Nothing stops them from doing that. The only thing that can stop them is, again, their cultural upbringing. And this is why, again, it caught my eye that this was a 22-year-old Afghani who broke into the country. And the previous story from 6 months ago that the government admittedly tried to bury over there by a super injunction was when they imported, because of an email link, 25,000 Afghanis relocated to Britain at a cost of 7 billion. So you have thousands of these guys running around over there. And I mean, this might sound controversial. You'd nearly, like, we don't know anything about this guy. He's 22. He'll have grown up. Yeah, well, even if he's 32, my point, Frank, is that, I actually do believe on an individual basis, you'd nearly feel sorry for them. Their country is completely destroyed, right? He will have grown up under the American war. God knows what he's seen. Their culture is brutal. They settle disputes with knives. That's what they do. They don't go to a small claims court or whatever it might be. So you're importing people from an honor culture where if you are insulted, the way you deal with that is through violence. They're obviously totally brutal towards women. And this is the same from people from Sudan, people from Rwanda, which was the second generation immigrant, the choir, who they tried to tell us was a Welsh choir boy responsible for Southport. So you can't. And what gets me, Frank, is in a way, the more traumatized they are, the more damaged they are, that actually goes in their favor in terms of granting them, say, asylum or leave to remain. But
Sure.
you've no idea what kind of person you're dealing with. Absolutely none. As you say, you've got enough. You've got the prisons. Go down to Belmarsh. Go down to Feltham. Like, the prisons are stacked full of people who are willing to settle a dispute with a knife for whatever reason. But both the Tory government and the Labour government have decided to import these guys in their thousands. And then, you can, what are you going to do? Take all the knives out of every kitchen in Britain? No, because English people don't settle disputes with knives. That's not the traditional way you guys settle disputes. But you're supposed to this is the new normal, Frank. Just get over it.
It's even if you could, and you got people like Sadiq Khan refusing to do stop and search, which is useful.
Yeah.
Even if you could, we got a guy a week before Wayne Broadhurst's murder. We got Rhiannon White was stabbed 23 times, including this is awful, but I mean, we've got to say it because this really happened to her.
Yeah.
Including 11 times in her head by a Sudanese asylum seeker who was another small boats migrant. So a guy who should never be in the country. And it gets worse. Like Mr. Broadhurst, she was working at one of these asylum hotels. So she is literally there providing food. I'm not sure exactly what her role was, but she's taking care of these people who the government insists on bringing in. And his response is
they can't stop them.
Follow her to, I think, a station. She was getting a train home, and brutally murder her. And apparently, 90 minutes after the murder, he's on CCTV dancing as though like he's the happiest guy in the world. But it gets worse, Laura, because I really think this point needs to be hammered home. The whole thing with the immigration, and certainly illegal immigration, this asylum, this refugee thing, is an utter scam. 90% of at least 90% of the small boats migrants, which has been confirmed even by things like the UN, they're men. They're not just men. They're young, fighting age men. They're literally the last people you're going to call refugees. So what the governments and everyone is seeming to say is that war zones, however bad their countries are, that's their problem. But you can be as nice as you want. War zones are so bad, only women and children and the elderly and the infirm can tolerate them. Bear in mind, they pass through France. You're supposed to claim asylum in the first safe country. They pass through
exactly.
France, the home of Brigitte Bardot and the best patisserie and wine in the world. Oh my God, I couldn't spend 3 nights there. They're coming to Britain for the money and the easy pickings, but only the men. So anytime someone is putting that argument, these are asylum seekers, they should be treated with nothing but contempt. These guys, at their best, They're economic migrants. That's the best thing you can say about them. They're here because the benefits package is the best. It only gets worse from there. So
Yeah,
any
well,
calling them
it's
refugees.
even worse than that. They always use this word. I've noticed the abuse of it. They always use the word. They do it here in Ireland as well. Vulnerable, vulnerable. I'm like, what are
Yeah,
you talking? Since when were 23-year-old or 24-year-old men of any any nationality vulnerable? They're the strongest of the bunch.
exactly that.
Yeah, no, it's just outrageous. There was a case here. Then God, I was just getting even more stressed. So there was a serious incident over here. We have these. Well, you have hotels housing migrants as well, and we have the same here in Ireland. They're called IPAS centres, where your local hotel is just sort of taken over by people seeking asylum. And one of the major ones is City West Hotel, and there was a serious incident there where a 10-year-old Irish girl who had been in care. The agency here is called TOSA. Um, they sort of seemed to lose her, and she ended up being seriously sexually assaulted by I think it's a man from who had come from Africa. Now he had gone through the whole thing. His asylum application was refused, and he was due for deportation. But if your asylum application is refused and you're supposed over here, the government don't put you on the plane straight away. You're just supposed to self-deport. Well,
Yeah,
unsurprisingly, this African guy decided not to self-deport and instead allegedly assaulted the 10-year old girl who is in state care here. And there were serious protests then outside that hotel, I think for 2 nights in a row. But I certainly think, first of all, as you say, they shouldn't. They don't seem to be able to secure the borders, particularly in Britain. It's just thousands coming over on the small boats. And secondly, those then that are finally issued with the deportation orders here, at least, if you're issued a deportation order, you should be detained immediately and deported. You shouldn't be able to just be running around, City West Hotel, and assaulting 10-year-old girls. But if you say that, then you're a crazy far right person. Um,
I think we're going to have to wear that as a badge of pride. I mean, but I think we'll
mm,
possibly get onto that later. But I think playing by the left's rules is a massive mistake the right is always making. The race card is the most dangerous thing. Possibly we'll mention that when we get round to Huntingdon. That was the same thing that happened in France, by the way. Did you see the? I mean, talk about gruesome. The murder of what's her name? Lola Daviet, I think it was, 12-year-old girl. I don't even want to say what happened. Did you see that murder? I think it was about a
no,
year.
I didn't.
Yeah,
In
it
Was
was
that
the same,
recent as well?
it was about a year ago, but the case because I think the
Oh, you
court
don't hear if. Yeah,
has been going on, and it was exactly the same thing that you just said. I think it was an Afghani national, and had been told she must deport, she must leave, but she wasn't forced to. So she was still in the country. And again, you just think, I mean, if you and I commit a minor, okay, we could send the wrong tweet. Maybe in this video we'll say the wrong
yeah,
thing. Keir Starmer would have me banged up in days
yeah.
if he thought it was it. He
Oh,
thought
they
it was
can move. They can move quick when they
move whether they
want
want.
to. Yeah,
But when it's deportation of people who should not be dangerous criminals who shouldn't be in the country, it's very, if you feel like it this month, maybe we'll give you some money, um,
yes.
and lives are lost. So
No, and I mean what it does, the damage it does genuinely, like to the democratic process, from the fact that just nobody has confidence anymore in the institutions. Because these stories, well, first of all, they don't report them, and then it's only when they break on Twitter, that then you're told. Now, one story they couldn't bury was, although it doesn't look like it has any immigration link, which which only proves that yes, we've got, you're full to the brim, thanks, with people who are willing to stab. Was this terrible case of, on the train, I think, from Peterborough, diverted to Huntington overnight from Saturday to Sunday. Again, a really serious knife attack. You can't do anything about knives. In the as I said, people trapped on a train. So, can you what stood out to you about that story?
Yeah, so this is a case of the guy's actually been named
Mm.
Anthony Williams, so good English name for a change. And this looks like a case of missed opportunities by the police, which they're now looking into. So apparently on the Friday, there was an attempted murder at a DLR station. I think,
So that's
again,
down in London. That's
yeah,
yeah. The
it's a
geography is important on this. Yeah.
14-year-old boy, again. And there's CCTV footage of him all over social media of him breaking into a barber shop, not
Yes.
once but twice. So I think that was the Friday evening and again on the Saturday morning. And you could see the guy. I mean, we want to call this this is a serious bread knife, and
Mm.
the customers just there's one guy that sort of stands and doesn't seem that bothered, which I was quite
Well,
impressed by.
I think he's. I saw the video
Probably
in the
shocked.
barber shop as well, and they're clearly sort of trapped. And I suspect what's going to happen is that we're going to be told Anthony Williams has very serious mental health problems. So probably staying still and not moving much is not a bad idea.
Yeah.
He was kind of a bit further away, But anyway, go on.
Yeah, and exactly as you say, one of the strange things about that video is how calm he looks, which seems to be
Yeah.
a feature of these, because the guy I mentioned, the screwdriver attack, had been staring coldly and what's it say here? Scary and spooky manner. I made a note of that, which echoes the actual Rudakabana thing. And what's really interesting about that is that was actually flagged up by the head teacher. I think Rudakabana had been expelled
Yes.
from at least one school in the past, and she had written on his report. This guy did, I think she used the word sinister and cold and calculating, which is pretty unusual for a teenage boy. You'd put that down. And a mental health worker basically told her, no, you can't write that because you're racially profiling a black boy with a knife.
Yes.
And I was sort of struck by that because racially profiling a black boy with a knife that keeps bringing a knife to school, you can only say
Mm.
that if the other kids are bringing knives to school and they're, hey, do you like my one? Oh, this yours a bit small, But I suspect Rudakabana was the only guy bringing a knife to
Mm.
school repeatedly. So whether you're racially profiling, that maybe you do want to flag that up. And again, same thing with the prevent program. He was referred to at least 3 times for fixation with genocide and whatever, but it was watered down.
Well,
And
he was referred to prevent, as you say, a number of times, but because they said because he just sort of had a plain old day-to-day fascination with gruesome killings, but there was no ideology behind it.
yeah,
Whereas
yeah,
Prevent is interested in terrorism, then they weren't interested. But yeah,
yeah,
but the teacher who flagged it up, yeah, she was the problem. And this is the thing about, I think, particularly in they say, oh well, if anything looks strange, you get this on the tube. If anything doesn't look right, you tell us.
that's
But
right.
no, they don't want to. No, unless it may have racial implications, then please don't tell us. If so, the guy, the terrorist who blew up the girls at the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester. I remember. I'm pretty sure this one of the security, either security or police, noticed the bomber who with a really big bag, and he
Yeah,
didn't go over and he didn't raise it because he was concerned he would be called racist.
exactly,
So
exactly.
this is the impact that, whatever you want to call it, politically correct or everybody is terrified actually of reporting anything that looks unusual, because if it's unusual and the person happens to be an ethnic minority, then you're going to be called out. You're now suddenly racist for doing what you were told. You know,
No,
go on.
no, you're exactly right. I mean, I think that is. I wrote a piece about the train attack for
Oh, okay.
European Conservative yesterday. It's not. I think it's coming out today, but that's basically the line I finish on, which is exactly as you say. I mean, it's almost impossible to get into that headspace. I'm a security guard, and I see a guy who basically looks like he's trouble. He looks like he's carrying a bomb. That is the most serious thing you can think.
Mm.
And you check yourself. You say, you know what? I don't really
It's
want to honor, because
it's not worth the hassle.
girls getting slaughtered and blown to smithereens is not worth me getting called racist and having the Twitter pile on and losing my job and whatever. And you can see this across the board. This is what's happening. So grooming gangs. The reason the grooming gangs got away with it was the police and the social workers and the politicians. They were terrified of being called. They knew what was happening, but they're terrified of being called racist. So they prioritize not being called racist over the lives of little girls, the murders and the rapes of little girls. Axel Rudakabana, same thing. Manchester Arena bomber, same thing. Knife crime. You can't. I mean, under Sadiq Khan, I think knife stop and search has been slashed by like at least 60%. But he's on record multiple times saying, I will do everything in my power to basically stamp out the practice because it's racist. And you have to sort of sit there logically and try and work out, well, hold on a minute. And this is where I think the right really falls down. So many people, even like people really doing a good job and acting in good faith, like Rupert Lowe, they'll post something and they'll say, it's not racist. See, it's a fact. And I'm like, well, why don't we just give it to them? Why don't we just accede to the race thing? Crime is racist. But whose fault is it that it's racist? Is it the fault of the rapists and the stabbers and the murderers, the people who are over enthusiastically, more than filling their quotas? Or is it the problem of the victims and the people that merely notice and can accurately draw conclusions from the data? I don't
Well,
have a problem.
yeah,
I don't
I
have a
mean,
problem with anyone being racist about data. If you're saving the lives of little girls and people walking their dogs and people going to concerts, you can call me a racist as you want. I'm not going to argue about it. But this is like a cancer, and we've got to do something about this. And it clouds the whole immigration debate. What's the name they call Nigel Farage every single time he's a racist? He's the only guy trying to sort it out, and he's the guy who's going to get elected to do the job. So it
well,
looks like
yeah.
I'm not that worried about being
The
racist.
polling certainly says that. I mean, the other thing about the race issue and the data, and indeed stop and search, is that particularly in London, knife crime, especially amongst black teenagers, they stab other black teenagers. So
Exactly.
if you cut down on stop and search, you end up with just more dead black teenagers. So
Exactly.
it doesn't. If you really cared about stopping black teenagers being murdered, you would increase your stop and search. And
Exactly.
actually, I do think, I mean, you
That
can have a
means
debate in terms of what the media pays attention to. Like, I think if white boys were killing other white boys in the numbers that happen in London, certainly in certain areas of London, there would be uproar. But it seems that, the media isn't that interested if some black kid gets stabbed, because it just doesn't sell papers. Whereas if a white middle class kid gets stabbed, that'll shift papers. That will be a news story.
yeah.
So you can argue it. You can argue what read away. Who feels that he can really care? He's more invested, as you say, in this very simple and single police sort of tactic of stopping search has been demonized. But a lot of black teenage kids have been killed as a result of UK stop and search being cut back. But we should also mention that in terms there were genuinely a lot of heroes on on that
Oh,
train
absolutely. Yeah,
from Notting. I know the driver was I think served in the Navy and was an
that's right.
Iraq War veteran, and he was a very quick thinking in getting off the fast line and being able to stop in Cambridgeshire. And there was also Stephen Crean, who put himself between the attacker and other women and children, and he has Irish parents. He's featured in the Irish Times. He is the son of a Dublin mother and a Roscommon father, and did the whole childhood in Ireland. Certainly in terms of visiting, he currently lives in Wimbledon in southwest London. But he was watching the football. I think that was why he was up north that time. He was returning from Nottingham, where he was watching Nottingham Forest play Manchester United, and he was stabbed 6 times on a Saturday night, including on his head and through 4 fingers. And I don't think, it's sort of tried to say, but it must have been absolutely terrifying. Just the amount of ordinary people. Certainly, there was him, and there were a few others, just very ordinary people who were willing to stand up to this knife wielding maniac. He easily could have been fatally stabbed. But it must have been absolutely terrifying. But he stepped in and said, he says in the interview anyway, there's no way he was he was going to let him pass. He was determined to stop him. So, in the midst of all of the bad news, there were certainly a few people, I think, on that train. There was a young guy who was a professional footballer, and he remains in hospital, having intervened. And actually, I think it's a miracle, and obviously it's a genuine miracle that nobody died from that kind of essentially a frenzied knife attack.
No, I think I was heartened to see those things. Toxic masculinity in full effect.
Yeah.
Because the guy, as you say, the football guy, I think he literally threw himself in the line of fire to protect a little girl, and he got stabbed in the face. And when he was talking about it, he said the Anthony Williams was saying, "Do you want to die? Do you want to die?" And obviously, no, I don't want to die. But he knew. I think he said, "Well, if I get out the way, he's going to get the other people. So it might as
Yes.
well be me." You know, which is which is such a fantastic. That's what you want. Those are the kind of people you want in your country. That kind of community spirit. We have a bond that pulls us together. And if there's a little girl there, it's me. Yeah, probably I should take it. He doesn't even, stranger. That's
Yes.
extraordinary. Yeah. So
Yeah, he remains in hospital. Jonathan, I can't pronounce his surname, Josh, I think, but he's a professional footballer. So, as you say, look, it's a sacrifice for everybody, but his career may well be in jeopardy now. But he put it all on the line, putting himself between, as you say, that the toxic, the young man, right? They're so toxic, they're willing to put themselves between these knife wielding maniacs and other vulnerable people, and he remains in hospital, non life threatening injuries. So um we wish him the best of luck. Look, it's all pretty depressing, but it's I always say it's important not to make it worse. It's critical now that, he said Starmer was elected on a Stop the Boats platform, but he doesn't seem to be able to get a hold of that. Who they are eyeing up, however, is rather depressingly, is the taxpayer. As you say, the benefits bill for immigration and the hotels bill is not cheap, and all Labour also promised not to raise taxes. And I think the budget is out in a few weeks. It's out in November the 26th. So there's a lot of kite flying and a lot of preparation of the voters. And unusually, as we both noticed today on Monday, Rachel Reeves has given a press conference 3 weeks before the budget. So there's a lot of I've written about this a fair bit on my Substack. I think tax bombshell, I think, is now inevitable. How do you think things are going to shape up for this budget in 3 weeks' time?
I think it's going to be absolute murder because if you're having to prefigure a budget before you've given the budget that everyone knows you're going to raise taxes and you're pretending you're not going to raise taxes and you're already pretty much taxing quite a lot. I mean, I don't know what it's going to be. It's mansion taxes or a couple of pence on the pound, but it's not good. And there's a reason she gave that speech at Downing Street, because she didn't want to be heckled and possibly forced to cry again at PMQs.
Yes.
I suspect, and I think I'm not alone, that the May elections next year, Reeves's fate and Starmer's fate are pretty much entwined. They could, I can seriously see a coup taking place. It's a bizarre situation because he's got this massive majority, but he can't hold
Yeah.
his party together. And he's got this chances like dead woman walking, but he can't sack her because, you know, you're going to run out of people to sack. But with these mass slaughters taking place on a nearly daily basis, he might not last that long, which sounds insane.
Yeah, I mean, the problem for Starmer, ironically, is, as you say, he has this massive majority, but it was the majority that stopped him being able to make any cuts to welfare, because the spending, the welfare spending in the UK really is, I think the debt now is 101% of GDP. That's what I remember reading at the weekend, and they did try and they had to make a partial U-turn on the winter fuel payments. They try to reform the PIP payments, which are because you can get disability payments now in the UK if you're feeling anxious, which I think, you're not talking about people who are seriously disabled and genuinely can't work. I mean, and these are young people, by the way. These are the 22-year-old men of military age, if you wish. And it's all like, well, I'm just way too anxious, to work, which is like, even 20 years ago, no 22-year-old male would even admit to saying, I'm too anxious to work. This would be
I'm
seen as just absolutely ludicrous.
I'm
Um,
too anxious to walk my dog. I can say that. But
yeah,
I had it.
yeah.
Look, I had it on Question Time. There was an audience member on Question Time was sitting up there as bold as
Oh,
brass.
yes,
Yeah.
I saw
Oh,
this.
I'm so anxious. I've been signed off sick. But let me go on national TV and
Yeah,
ask you, really? Did you
yeah.
think it gone through? Yeah, but as you say, they're playing the system just like the migrants.
Yeah, I think it was 11 billion. This is just on PIP now. Was the budget for this disability payments in 2019, and it's forecast to rise to 34 billion by 2030. But I think, some people think of tax and spend is these are all boring subjects, but it's not, because, tax, when the government tax you, it's quite obviously taking your money that you have spent your time and energy acquiring. And we've gone from having, a welfare net for people who genuinely need it to this massive explosion, as you say, of 22-year-olds who are too anxious to work, but not so anxious that they can't go on Question Time. And I always love, the language that they use, because you had this with Cameron a little bit as well. It's like, so the headline of the Times today is, "We all have to do our bit," Reeves tells the nation. So, but some people will be asked to do their bit a little bit more than other people will be asked to do their bit. And I think it's the case. I don't know what it's like in Ireland, but, when people complain about the tax burden, I'm told that the top 0.1% of earners pay more income tax than the entire bottom 50%
Yep,
in the UK. So, the bottom 50% aren't going to be doing their bit, because
they're not.
they just don't pay that much in tax at the moment.
But
Um,
the top 0.1% can leave the country anytime they like.
yeah.
Yeah, so good luck with
So
that.
this is her problem, because again, you have this, and we have a whole socialist army over here, of Sinn Féin and People Before Profit, and they're an absolutely terrifying bunch of people. And again, these are kind of they're not even the equivalent of Starmer; they'd be the equivalent of Corbyn. and they will tell you this is like we're going to have, because our recent presidential election returned a woman called Catherine Connolly, who's 68 and a socialist. Now, thankfully, she doesn't really have much power, or really any power, very limited. But I think they're going to sell this 68-year-old woman as the new face of the new modern Ireland. Which doesn't, she's not really the new face of the new modern Ireland either herself, or indeed her ideas. Because as you know, socialism has been tried before and it always destroys the middle class. Um, and so Reeves, I don't know if you saw this one as well. I think it's actually the symbolism of it, because she's going to supposedly she's going to come after the wealthy family doctors. Now, I wrote about this again. Now, who earn a whopping 118,000. Now, as I don't know how you feel about this, Frank, but like the family GP who might be taking home 110,000 in England. Now, initially you might think, God, like that's 110 grand. That's like, it's a lot more than I'm earning. Now, these will be the head of the entire GP practice, right, in the UK. And if you live in the southeast or you live in London, 120 grand actually, it's not. It puts you in the middle class. But also, you've already spent 7 years training to become your GP, right? You're a junior doctor for, at least 5 years. You're working at least 12-hour shifts. You have finally made it through and waded through all of that stuff. And to have the temerity to bring home, 118,000. And now you're now suddenly, part of the super wealthy. Didn't you know, Frank?
You're getting taxed at 50%, and you got kids in private school that now you're getting penalised for. And if you're living in the southeast, good luck with a mortgage.
Yeah. So this is what I really resent, in that it targets the middle class, and because, if you say, the actual super wealthy can move. Right, especially if they move, they're global, right? They can leave London. They don't necessarily have ties there. So now they have to go after the lawyers and the accountants and the doctors. So especially, obviously, for Labour, as it's a socialised health system, most of the time they love doctors, right? They can't get enough of them. They were banging the drums for them, weren't they?
Yeah.
In lockdown, but now they're part of the super wealthy. But I think it's a sign of desperation now if they're going to come after these guys. And then the other thing, which I thought was just genuinely outrageous, my conservatism is, have you seen that they are now thinking of removing the capital gains exemption if you sell your family home for on this is the mansion tax. This is if your family home is worth over 1.5 million.
That's right. Yeah. I saw that. Yeah. And I wonder how many Labour MPs have got those kind of homes.
But it's just that, like, in the southeast, it says that a home worth 1.5 million is not, it puts you in the upper middle class for sure. But like, pretty much every family home in the west of London is worth that, right? And there's just something, there's something I think really wrong about taxing a capital gains on your family home. It's already done on your second home. You already have to pay if you build up a business. If you're an entrepreneur, right, and not, say, an MP who leeches off the taxpayer. If you set up a business and you grow that business and then it's successful and you sell it on, you have to pay capital gains on that, right?
Yeah.
Now, you may well have taken the profits from that business and outrageously decided to buy a house. And your house, through no fault of your own, Frank, increases in value because because a number of reasons. One, they haven't built a number of homes, right? Two, immigration has gone off the charts, right? Three, there's been like a massive divorce revolution in the last 40 years. So there's a lot more people living on their own. And now you're sitting on your outrageously, how very dare you sit on the family home worth 1.5 million. And then if you come along and try and sell that, they're gonna tax you on that. They're gonna tax you on the capital gains. So I just think I just think it's really really desperate stakes. If these are the kind of things they are proposing. And do you think she'll still be in her position this time next year?
No, no. In fact, I would take nearly any bet that she'll be gone definitely after the May elections, if not before. She might be gone after this budget. It might be that bad.
Yeah.
But they missed a trick. You know what? You know what they should tax? Knife.
Oh, yeah,
They should.
yeah,
I don't know why Sadiq Khan doesn't just issue stabbing permits. 100, 200 quid a pop. Knife endorsements. You could have. You could have the Olympic events, stabathons. Well, Notting
yeah.
Hill kind of is
I'm
that.
surprised. Yes. Yeah, well, I'm surprised they haven't put VAT on knives, so far, but I guess we'll wait for that. They'll probably start, God knows that they'll start taxing next. I mean, but actually, if you think it's bad in the UK, I read and I wrote about it as well. The middle class are hammered even more in Ireland because there was a research paper out. This was actually from a Washington think tank during the week, and they looked at the tax burden on middle class workers on across the OECD countries, and Ireland was the worst, bar Korea. That's
Wow.
yeah. Yeah, the tax on the lower working class incomes it's a very very progressive tax system, which can be good in some ways in that it makes work pay. But it's the corporation tax, as you know, is very limited, but is very low in Ireland. I think it's about 12%. But the tax on the middle class is absolutely huge. Now, the other big story over there, which I actually want my parents, oddly enough, are fascinated about, but I am not, was Prince Andrew. Have you been shedding a tear? Have you been shedding a tear about Prince Andrew? No, I've named him wrong. What is he now? Mr. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
Yeah, I was having this discussion with my brother,
Yeah.
and basically, I basically couldn't. I've always thought I couldn't care less about the monarchy. I'm not
Oh,
interested, except when the Queen died, and then I
yes.
had to change my mind because I was actually upset, and I was shocked. It was, but I think that was only the Queen, and Prince
Mm,
Philip I just really liked because I thought he's the best unofficial stand-up comedian we've ever had, and I'm sad that they're gone. But apart
mm.
from that, I they're great stories because it always makes me think like, well, what would I be like if I had unlimited money and could just do whatever I want? I think it's obviously got interest. The Andrew story, I I'm kind of in two minds because obviously, if there is a massive global paedophile ring literally playing out in plain sight and everyone knows about it, but no one's finding out about it. That's obviously bad. So maybe we should do something about that. And when I watch him, I rewatched the Newsnight interview recently. I don't know why,
Oh, yes.
and I just thought
Oh, so you
like
rewatched it. Okay, interesting.
I don't know why I did, but I just thought a couple of things. One, all of his advisors would have told him don't do this, and
Mm.
he is going to be the worst liar in the history of the like, I could have done a better job, and I'm not a good liar. Like every single thing he said was so obviously oh, probably I'll get arrested for saying this. It looks untrue. I don't even think made this pushed him particularly hard on most
No.
of the stuff. But having said all that, and having said I'm not particularly interested in the monarchy or people that, spend, waste more in a week than I'd earned in a lifetime. I'm a little bit what's the way to say? It is sad to see that he's been thrown under the bus so readily by his brother and probably more so by William, who maybe is calling some of the shots. He's not actually been convicted of anything as far as I'm aware. I mean, he did this bizarre thing of paying £12 million of money to a woman he'd never met, which is not the
Yes.
kind of thing that I, or allegedly never met. It's not the kind of thing that I would do. But I think maybe the guy is due is should be afforded some, at least some due process. So that's kind of sad to see. Like if that happened in my family, I'd be sad.
Yeah.
What's your take on it?
Well, I think, I mean, I like you said, I haven't looked at the story, in detail, and I said, but it's interesting in that my editor John is also, and he did write a piece on it. Although it is of your view, I think, in that it's important not to get hysterical, and he is entitled to due process. Now, when we talk about due process, though, really that's to do with a criminal wrong. So nobody, he hasn't been arrested. He's not having, he isn't just sort of serving time. He has essentially been kicked. He's been kicked out and stripped of his. I think he's the first birth prince to be stripped of his title, in I don't know, ever, or at least in hundreds of years. And so I think that's a fair point to say. He should be in on actually, I saw again on Twitter come up now, they're thinking of coming for his medals for the Falklands War, and even a few people are saying, well, now that act's not right because he earned those. It isn't right. It wouldn't be right to strip him of those. But what I think it proves, though, and maybe, but I think they show it really. I do like popular culture. I don't know how much of The Crown you've watched, but
Nothing.
the thing about, well, so the
Is
first the
is it
first
good?
season. The first season is excellent. The first two seasons are excellent, and I'll tell you about it. One of my absolute favorite scenes. But this is what the firm do, Frank. Now, maybe I know it better than you. They will do whatever it takes to survive, and if it means just cutting your brother off at the knees, that's what they will do. That is what they do. They are survivors, and yes, the Queen. Obviously, the love for her was just immense, and you could see that. But she is a once in a sort of a generation, once in a 200-year figure, I think, because she was totally dedicated to the role. Um, but if you any, I think, royal historian will say they are survivors. They will do whatever it takes to survive. So I'm not really surprised that Charles has done what he's done, or even if it's William behind the scenes. I mean, in terms of the interview, just as an aside before I get to The Crown, yeah, I remember, I think I remember watching that interview, and again, like everybody, they must have been just shocked. Like, what is this man doing? Why have you agreed to this? It's not really the subject matter; it's not a lasting matter. But I'm not a huge fan of Emily
Oh no,
Michaelis, but
me too.
yeah, but she did really well in that interview, and as you said yourself, what she did really well. It's one of those rare interviews where actually she didn't badger him. She didn't do the really hard questions. She just
She let
gave him
him
enough
hang.
rope.
Yeah,
Yeah, she
yeah.
just gave him enough rope, and because he's so clearly so arrogant, and just I would imagine just because that's how he was raised, just totally detached from reality. I think he just thinks he can say whatever he wants, and he's not going to be pulled up on it. So in terms of interview technique, I thought that was very clever and excellent, because she didn't need to say anything, right? He just dug his own
That's
his
right.
own
Yeah.
grave on that. But the just coming back to The Crown, and I do think they paint it really well when there's a long sequence of events in that. I think it must have been the first season when they when oh God, when the king dies, and as you know, Prince Elizabeth was away at the time in where, I forget where she was in, and then comes home, and she has to get she gets a lot of instruction very quickly in terms of what she's wearing and coming down the plane, and all the ranks are changing, and then she's walking through the palace, and her mother and I think it must be Prince Margaret now have to drop back because she's the queen, and
Really.
she is, yeah, so she's all in black, and she comes down. The whatever way they do to the music is excellent, and it was her it must have been Queen Mary, I think, comes in, and she's all, the voiceover is her writing a letter to Princess Elizabeth's now Queen Elizabeth, and she says very clearly, you now have to put Elizabeth is dead. You are now, Regina, and everything you do must go to serve that. And that's exactly what Charles has done. So the voiceover is this letter, and then she comes down, and then when her grandmother, then the grandmother, then who's written the letter, then courtesies to her. The now young Queen Elizabeth's reaction is, I mean, the actress is obviously phenomenal. It's so telling in that she realizes that this is for real now. She reigns, literally reigns supreme. Everybody is subordinate to her, including her own grandmother.
Yeah.
And seriously, you should look it up on YouTube. Even when we finished it, it's a phenomenal clip. But when, I don't know whether the letter, they took license with the letter or if it really existed, but it really brings it home. They will do whatever it takes. They would say they're doing it whatever it takes for the monarchy to survive, but it's clearly, that's intertwined. It's personal. They'll do whatever it takes for them to survive, and so it doesn't surprise me that King Charles has done this at all. But yeah, I totally accept the concern in relation to into due process, and but yeah, I don't have. I think again, this is the problem with the Spare, right? It's a terrible ice, because even if you're first in line, say again.
You could see what it's done to Harry. I mean, he's going to be sitting in the shadows, jealously watching what's not happening to him for his rest of his life. It's sad.
Yeah, so I think, when they talk about reform, I definitely think there's an argument for some sort of reform where the Spare can actually just go and do something, because I think it is the case that the devil makes work for idle hands, and it must just be, these days especially, I mean, it's just, I think it must be a terrible, I mean, I'm not sure convinced it's great to be first in line, but I definitely think it's terrible to be second in line, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Up the second.
Just... All right, you've got a long tale of woe, do you?
I don't know. I did pretty good, but yeah, I'm second of four, so I can play the Harry and the Andrew card if necessary. I suppose.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, I think sibling. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of research has been written on sibling rivalries and where you are in the line. But second, heir to such a huge role, it's got to be difficult. Well, Frank, that nearly takes us to the hour. Did you have any final comments or
I've just got one thing, which is a Margaret Thatcher quote, and and she just had her centenary, so I think it's appropriate. This is I don't know, but it's from a speech apparently in 1979 in Bolton, I think, and it's appropriate. She said, or she wrote, if I'm reading because I can't remember it.
Okay.
If a government can't protect citizens and their property against violence, vandalism, and theft, there is little point in having a government at all.
Yep.
I think as she would be now, she was on the money.
Yeah, and I think another one of her quotes was that I think she said in an interview as well, I can't bear to see Britain in decline. And I think, I'm sure she couldn't bear to see what's happening to it now.
We need about, oh God, what I wouldn't give to have Maggie back.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to put all your hope in Farage now. He's, you definitely need a disruptor. And Trump has turned it around a little bit in the United States. I think it can still be done.
Sure.
You have to hang on to hope.